What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the Scalar Learning channel. And we are continuing this amazing epic series, which is focusing more on college application process, college admissions, even the transfer process. And so today we're not only going to be here, just me and Olivia again, but we've got one of my students, and this is a longtime student of mine, so I'm so excited to have her. Her name is Kayla, and she's going to be telling us about her first year. She just finished her first year at college, so it's so cool. I say this all the time. One of the best things about being a tutor is that you get to see kids through this entire lifelong journey of education and all this stuff. So I've seen it. It's so exciting. And she has just found out that she has been accepted as a transfer applicant to my school, my old alma mater, Northwestern University. So it's so exciting. She's so excited. And I know that was a school that she was very excited about from the get-go. So we're here to talk about that today. And we've got Olivia too, because she's been part of the journey as well. So without further ado, Kayla, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. And let's just start with that first question. Why? Why did you want to transfer?
I decided about junior year, I finalized that I wanted to early decision to Northwestern, and I filled out my applications, and I sent that in. I got deferred, and then I ended up getting denied once it moved to the regular decision pool. And honestly, a few minutes after opening that decision, I just decided to look up what it would take to transfer, and I kind of always had that in the back of my mind, always knew that's where I wanted to end up and that's where I wanted to be. I went into my second choice school with an open mind. I had a great year, but I always felt like I still wanted to try again for Northwestern and just see if it would work as a transfer. They're one of those universities that accepts a larger amount of transfers than most, and they have a really nice transfer community, so you go in with other students. So throughout the year, I thought about it back and forth a lot about if I actually wanted to end up doing that application, if I was going to submit it and see what would happen. I was definitely nervous at times, but in the end, I was super happy that I decided to do it.
It's so cool because I also went through this entire transfer process, but in law school, and also went to Northwestern. And I remember some people that I was talking to, friends of mine at the University of Minnesota, where I was at law school my first year, thinking, hey, it might be tricky. You know, you're going into an established class, group of friends, and I just never, I don't know, it never even entered my mind. It didn't bother me, and I found it to be the furthest thing from the truth that it was difficult to make friends. In fact, it was so easy because I feel like also, likewise in law school and undergrad, you're not as in such an intense state of mind. You can be more relaxed, have more fun, and socialize a bit more. So that was my experience. Did that thought cross your mind? I mean, I know you mentioned they have a really strong incoming class, but did you have concerns about that?
Not really. I know that they have about 300 transfers a year go, so there's definitely other people in the same boat as you. And I originally from Chicago, so have a lot of established friends already who are there, and they just completed their first year, and they've been super welcoming and nice. So I'm excited for that. It was definitely hard to leave Wisconsin and my friends there, but I'm excited.
Awesome. And now I want to talk about the logistics, because I think what's amazing too is you had a plan right from the get-go. So let's talk about that. And I know Olivia was part of the team that helped you think everything through and make sure everything was all aligned. So what were the things right out the gate that you're like, okay, I have to do X, Y, and Z in order to give myself the best chance as an applicant?
Definitely first semester grades need to be as good as they possibly can be. That was like the #1 focus. And you're not really like writing anything first semester. There's no essays happening. You're just kind of figuring it out, you know, still deciding, are you actually going to go through with that? But I wanted to do well in school too. So obviously that was a concern. And then I was like, had this in the back of my mind, so I always knew I needed to do extra well and put in that extra effort because there's not a second semester to make up for it. So that was it. And then you have to like go to office hours to get those good grades usually, or at least in my case I did. And that was super helpful. The professors were really willing to help. And then it made it easier to have someone to go to ask for that academic evaluation that you need as a transfer at most institutions. So I had then a professor to go back to come like March when I needed them to send something in for me.
And just logistically, I know of course you can say the basics of, hey, to get good grades, I need to work hard, yada, yada. But what were some of these specific things that you just made sure these things always happened to do your best?
Definitely planning it out. I had a few really big, hard essays that Olivia was able to like assist me on and just go over so I could have someone review it and make sure that they sounded as good as they possibly could, because those were going to be big portions of my grade. So definitely in college, as opposed to high school, you have a lot of papers that are weighted really heavily. So you really can't make any mistakes on those, and you need to be planning ahead of time because they're usually like 10 to 15 pages. So there's no really second chances in most of these classes. So just making sure to stay on top of everything and really not leaving it to the last minute. And then the final exams obviously are all encompassing of the semester. So you have to like consistently understand every unit, because if you really, it's easy to like not attend lecture and not pay attention. And then just you get to the end of the semester and you have a big problem on your hands. So just staying on top of it early on.
That's such an interesting change when you go to college. You kind of, if you don't attend lecture, nobody says anything.
Yeah.
So that's an easy trap to fall down, and you miss one, you miss two. So how, like, yeah, what was going to class, I mean, how important do you feel like that was for you in terms of staying on top of stuff?
I really never missed a class, especially like those big lectures, because I find those are the hardest to actually make up or get information from. I know I skipped like a few classes once in a while if I had to be somewhere else, and if that has to happen, just going to the professors and getting the work I missed from them, talking stuff through with them, making sure that even though I wasn't in class that day, that I understood everything that was said.
Got you. Okay, so now we've gotten that, which is such a critical piece of the entire transfer puzzle, but now let's talk about the essay and that process. I know, Olivia, you also worked with Kayla on that, so tell us, like, what's the process now choosing what to write about, and how did it all come together?
I think what's different, especially applying as a transfer instead of from high school, is the why that university for me was like the why Northwestern essay. You need to address what university you're at, where you are, what it's like, what you don't like about that, or and why their university would suit you better and the programs there that you don't have access to at the moment. So you really need to highlight the differences between the two institutions and why you prefer the institution you're hopefully going to.
And how did you guys go about doing that?
Well, so I think to add to what you're saying, something that's really exciting and unique to the transfer process is that you've already had like a year or a half a year of life outside of high school, like adult life, I guess I'd call it. So they're evaluated a little bit differently, almost more strictly, because you do have more to say about the world. You have gone out and experienced it on your own. So I think on top of all of the why this school versus why not the other, you have to inject your evolved or newfound perspective on the world as well, and new opinions. And so I think that was really exciting to start with, because our sessions start with a lot of talking.
Yeah.
I think it's just a lot of talking, and Kayla talking and me writing down what she's saying, and then, as I've described it, like sifting for the gold in a lot of what we talk about. And I know for your your first year college applications, I came into that process late in the game, so we were kind of getting you ready for regular decision. So it was really exciting to readdress it all for transfers and be like, oh, cool, how has Kayla changed? What's evolved? What's still the same? Why is it still the same? And putting that whole piece of her personality into 3 essays total, maybe, 700 words perhaps. So
I think it's also cool that now this is the school that you're going to, which at the beginning you had already come to that decision that that was going to be the right fit. Can you just talk a little bit about that process too, of how you came down to Northwestern being your top choice? What type of research did that entail?
Growing up in Chicago, I'd heard the name Northwestern, I think, my whole life. I was born at Northwestern Hospital. Their legal studies program and their pre-law program is really great, so that meant a lot to me because I do want to go to law school. That's one thing I looked at. They have something called like a Chicago field study program. So instead of taking like classes for units, they don't use credits, they use units. Instead of taking classes for that, you get a job in downtown Chicago in your field of interest, and that counts as your units for the quarter. And they're also on the quarter system, so instead of taking about like 10 classes a year, which most schools have you do on a semester system, you actually end up taking about 12 classes. Okay. And I like that, you don't have to take as many gen eds then, or you don't have to be in them as long. And that was something that's really important to me, to not have to spend all that time on gen eds, and I'd want to focus on what I'm interested in, because I was definitely going into school knowing exactly what I wanted to do, and that hasn't changed at all this past year. So that was super important to me. I like its proximity to like a big city, and it's a super diverse campus. So I'm really excited about that.
The one thing I did want to ask you is, since you have just now completed your first year of college and you went to a fairly intense high school, great college preparatory high school, what was it like? Like, what's first year like compared to high school curriculum and all the extracurriculars and all that stuff?
It was definitely nice to not be in like 7 classes, and in college you just have access to so many more courses. And I've always been someone who knew, since freshman year in high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew exactly what my interests were, and honestly, they never changed throughout high school. I've wanted to do the same thing forever. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I've always been interested in history classes, law classes, and things like that. So for me, it was really nice to get to college where I could pick the classes I wanted to take, and I didn't have to do the traditional English, science, math. I could just focus on what I was actually interested in. So I loved that. It made it easier to work. It made me want to work harder because I was interested in what I was learning, instead of just sitting in like a general high school chemistry class. And I definitely think high school was really, really hard, especially being a college preparatory high school. And I'm grateful for that, because I think they taught me a lot of valuable skills to take with me to college, like time management, how to not get behind. And it was a small high school, so they really taught you to schedule meetings with your teachers and make sure you're on top of your work. So I kind of took that with me to college, and I was able to easily speak to my professors, send them emails to me, and develop a closer relationship with them, which I think led to me understanding material better when I'd go to office hours.
And I think that even in the transfer process, the taking initiative is so important for that process. And first year of college, and you were always so good about that. You were planning with me. You're like, hey, here's my deadline. I want to have X amount of sessions before then, or hey, I want to have this done by this date. And you made our process so easy because you knew exactly what you wanted and when you wanted it by. It was such a breeze.
I definitely feel like high school made everything super scheduled, so I learned to make everything super scheduled later on. And it was the transfer process, you definitely have to take more initiative yourself, because coming from a college prep high school, everyone is going to college and you have college counselors and there's a whole team, and it's just what you do. Whereas as a transfer, it's not what you do. You have to just decide to do that yourself and figure out how you're going to make that happen.
So I know that when you were going through this entire process, you were working with Olivia, kind of the two of you together in terms of crafting the essays and planning everything out. Tell us about that process and tell us about how you guys work together.
So she was extremely helpful. I love how we started our sessions just talking, it took a while to really finalize what I wanted to say, especially having already written a personal statement and a Why Northwestern. It was even harder the second time to decide what I want to say for that Why Northwestern bit and make sure it didn't sound like what I'd said before, and that high school senior perspective versus now a college freshman perspective. And she was super helpful in just listening and writing down anything I said, and then we'd be able to go through it and find out what had to go, what was good. And I could send her links of a thing I found on the Northwestern website and be like, oh, should we talk about this? Where can we insert this? And I think I started out with a 750 word Why Northwestern, and it had to be cut down to 300 words. And I just could not decide what had to go. I was going back and forth. I was like, I want this, I want this, I want that. And so having her be able to look over it and be like, this needs to go. This is a waste of our space. We don't need to say this. It's understood. Or really just sifting for what was good and what should stay, and getting out the things that I didn't need or that were just going to be a waste of my words.
It's so interesting how that trimming process is harder than anything. It's harder than it's so different. I had to go through that so many times, so no, I totally get that.
I think that's part of, it's always great to have an outside eye in writing anything, because you kill your darlings, right? You want to keep everything, and that's kind of the most fun I get to have when it's like, wait, you've got 300 words here, but we can say this in 200. And I always love when a student brings me too much. That's always the best way to start, because then we can refine. It's like sculpting, just carving away at the marble. Yeah.
But it's an art, and that's something that I struggle with so much in law school and in general. So no, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, we're so thrilled. I feel like this has been just an amazing story from start to finish. Everything's just worked out how you've always envisioned it. So, As we end with this segment, what would you say, admissions have come out not too long ago. Maybe there's students out there that got into their second choice, third choice, whatever it may be. I know we somewhat touched on it, but what would you say, what's your number one piece of advice from a mindset perspective and an action perspective of what they should do right away?
If you're interested in transferring, read the requirements for transfer. Just keep those in the back of your head at all times. Make sure you're still fulfilling them. Go into your current university or wherever you're going with an open mind. Enjoy it, because it's still going to be a fun year. I still had a great year where I was. I loved it, but don't be afraid to try again.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible testament to you because you knew your first choice, and when you didn't get in the first time, you didn't give up. You're like, no, I know that's where I'm meant to be. I just need to make sure they see it. Yeah. And you did, and I think that's the coolest thing about this entire process.
We are so thrilled. We are so proud of you. We're so excited. Thank you for joining us. You can see how well-spoken and just terrific. What a wonderful speaker. So thank you for sharing that so eloquently. And thank you guys so much for joining. And we're going to continue this series of really cool stories and videos from students that have gone through this process so you can go through the process with greater ease and greater comfort. If you do like this video, make sure to click that like button. And if you want to see more from the Scalar Learning channel, make sure to click subscribe. Last but not least, if you are interested in working with Olivia throughout this entire process, application process, what have you, hit us up at tutoring@scalarlearning.com and we'll be happy to connect you.